Hello, friends. About 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. You ever feel like the road itself is alive? Not just alive, but watching you, waiting for the right moment to wrap its long, cold fingers around your soul and squeeze till you can't breathe. I ain't saying that for drama or nothing. I've been driving trucks over 25 years, and in all that time, I've seen things most folks wouldn't believe even if you held a flashlight under your chin at a campfire and swore it was true. I used to laugh at those highway ghost stories, you know? The vanishing hitchhiker, the lady in white, the phantom semi, sounded like stuff folks made up to keep themselves awake behind the wheel. But not anymore. Not since that night out on Route 191 through Arizona, about 15 miles past a gas station that never shows up on any GPS. That's where it all started for me. It was 2:43 in the morning, I remember, because I'd just checked the dash clock after hearing this weird humming noise coming from under the rig. Thought maybe I'd blown a belt or something. I pulled over on a shoulder so narrow it felt like the edge of the earth. Desert on both sides, pitch black except for my headlights, catching the dust swirling in the air like ash. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out to check the engine. That's when I noticed the silence. No bugs, no wind, not even the ticking of the cooling engine. Just dead silence, like the whole world was holding its breath. And then I saw him, or it. A man, I think, standing about 20 yards away in the dark just off the road. No flashlight, no car, just standing there barefoot, in torn jeans and a filthy shirt, head tilted sideways like he was listening to something. At first I thought he might need help, maybe broke down and wandering. I raised my light to get a better look, called out, "Hey buddy, you all right?" But he didn't move, just kept standing there, eyes locked on mine. That's when the flashlight cut out. Dead batteries. Perfect timing, right? Now I'm standing in the dark, holding a useless light, staring at this stranger in the middle of the desert with no sound around us. And I swear to you, I could hear my heart pounding so loud it echoed. I turned back to the truck, slowly, like if I moved too fast I'd spook whatever that thing was. When I looked back one last time, he was gone. No footprints, no dust disturbed, just vanished. And that was just the beginning. I climbed back into my cab faster than a jackrabbit on fire, locked the doors, and sat there gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I told myself I was just tired, maybe hallucinating. Long hours, empty roads, playing tricks on my mind. I turned the ignition and the truck roared back to life. But something was off. The hum I'd heard earlier was still there, louder now, like a low growl under my seat. I leaned forward, adjusting the vents, thinking maybe it was just the AC acting up. But then I noticed the temperature gauge. It was bouncing, up, down, up again, like something was shaking the engine itself. And that's when I smelled it. Not oil or rubber. No, this was different. It smelled like rot, like something dead had been stuffed into the vents and left there to bake in the desert sun for days. I gagged, rolled down the window, and tried to get some air, but the smell only got stronger. It was coming from inside the truck. I turned to grab my phone, thinking maybe I could call someone, maybe another driver on the CB, but my phone was dead. Not low battery, dead. Wouldn't turn on. That's when the truck's interior lights flickered. Just once. Then again. I swear to you, it felt like someone was in the sleeper behind me. I turned so fast I almost wrenched my neck, but there was nothing there. Just my bunk, my cooler, a few crumpled up maps. But the smell, that god-awful smell, was stronger than ever. And then something whispered my name. I'm not making that up. Clear as day, like someone leaning right up behind my ear and breathing it out. Danny. I froze, didn't even breathe. And I ain't proud to say it, but I started praying. Not a big church guy, But in that moment, I was whispering every half-remembered prayer from childhood, just begging for daylight. I turned the truck back onto the highway, tires squealing as I tore out of there like a bat out of hell. The humming stopped the second I hit 60. The smell, too. It was like none of it had happened. But the worst part? When I looked at the side mirror, just for a split second, I saw a shadowy figure sitting in the passenger seat. Just a shape, no face, no detail, like smoke in the shape of a man. I slammed the brakes, turned, and the seat was empty. But the imprint was there, like someone had just gotten up. I didn't stop driving till the sun came up, and even then I only pulled into a crowded truck stop, parked right under the lights. Slept with one eye open and a wrench under my pillow. After that night, I started hearing stories from other drivers, things they'd seen, people who'd vanished. Turns out I'm not the only one. The highway hides things, dark things. And if you're out there long enough, something's bound to find you. I thought maybe I was losing it, you know. Figured I'd had one bad night and my mind was playing catch up, messing with me after all those years on the road. But the thing is, it didn't stop. A week later, I was hauling a load through New Mexico, long flat stretch of highway, with nothing but scrub brush and sky so wide it makes you feel like an ant crawling across a table. I had the radio on low, just enough to keep the silence from creeping in, and I was sipping coffee, trying to stay sharp. The sun had just dipped behind the horizon, and the light turned this weird rusty red, the kind that makes everything feel off, like you're looking at the world through dirty glass. That's when the static started. Not on the radio, in the EB. It cracked and hissed like someone was slowly turning the dial back and forth, but I hadn't touched it. Then came this voice, low, scratchy, like someone whispering through broken teeth. Mile marker 263. He's still there. That's all it said. No call sign, no name, just those words. I stared at the CB like it had grown eyes, reached for the mic and said, "Who's this? You okay?" But all I got back was more static. I passed mile marker 260, and I swear every hair on my arm stood up. By the time I hit 263, my headlights landed on something in the distance. Stalled vehicle, maybe. A small blue pickup, sitting crooked on the shoulder with the driver's door wide open. No lights on, no hazard blinkers, just sitting there like it had been abandoned in a hurry. I slowed down, rolled past it real careful, scanning the area. No one in the truck, no one near it. But there was something written across the windshield, in big greasy letters. Looked like it had been smeared on with someone's finger. It said, "Don't stop." Well, I didn't need much convincing. I hit the gas, heart thumping like a jackhammer, trying to rationalize it. Maybe a prank. Maybe a warning from some good Samaritan who'd seen something bad go down. But I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched, like someone, or something, was tracking me, just out of sight. I checked the mirrors constantly, but the road behind me stayed empty. That night, I pulled into another truck stop, one of those mom-and-pop places that still serve fresh pie and know the names of the regulars. I asked the guy at the counter if he'd heard anything about a blue pickup near 263. His face went pale. He said, "You saw that thing?" I nodded. He leaned in close, real serious-like, and said, "That truck's been there off and on for years. No plates, no VN. No one ever sees who puts it there. And everyone who stops ends up vanishing." That was the night I realized something was seriously wrong with these highways. They're not just stretches of asphalt. They're living, breathing things. And they remember every soul that ever traveled them. Now, by this point, I'd been on the road long enough to know when something wasn't just coincidence. That blue pickup, the whisper on the CB, the shadow in my rig. Those weren't just random occurrences. Something was out here, and it was following me. Or worse, maybe it was already with me. I didn't say a word to anybody else for a while. What would I say? "Hey, you ever see a ghost hitchhiking in the middle of the desert?" Or hear your own name whispered from an empty cab? Yeah, I'd get laughed right out of the diner. But then came the night I hauled a refrigeration load through Louisiana. Now listen, those back roads in the south can get real eerie after dark. You've got thick trees crowding the pavement, Spanish moss hanging like long gray fingers, and the air is always damp like the whole forest is breathing. I was making good time, just passed through a town called Morgan's Hollow. Not even on most maps. The locals just call it the Hollow. Right as I passed the faded city limit sign, my GPS froze. Just locked up. Time, location, everything. Stuck. On 2:17 a.m., like the damn thing gave up trying to track where I was. No service. Radio went dead. Even the CB clicked off with a soft little pop. Then I saw the lights up ahead. Not headlights, lanterns. Dozens of them, lining both sides of the road like I was entering a parade of the dead. They were held by people, or at least shapes of people, standing completely still, not moving an inch. Their faces were covered in burlap sacks stitched at the mouths, with 2 eye holes cut too wide, and each one turned to follow my truck as I passed. No movement, no sound, just those awful stitched-up sacks and those empty black holes staring into my soul. I thought maybe it was some kind of ritual, a small-town festival or whatever. But the deeper I drove, the colder it got, and not like cool night air. This was unnatural, like the inside of a freezer. Frost began creeping up the inside of my windshield, even though it was 80 degrees outside when I checked back at the last stop. I turned on the defroster, but it didn't help. The frost kept spreading, forming shapes, handprints, dozens of them, all reaching inward, like they were trying to claw their way into the cab from the outside. I hit the gas hard. My rig rattled, engine roared, and I tore out of the hollow like my life depended on it. And maybe it did. I didn't stop till dawn broke, and I saw a real town sign again. When I looked in my side mirror, I swear to you, there were still icy fingerprints melting down the glass. That wasn't a dream, that was real. And from that night on, I started keeping a journal. Dates, times, routes, everything. Because the pattern wasn't just in my head. Something was tracking me across states. Every highway, every stop, every cold breath I took alone in the dark. It was like I was being marked. And the road was starting to remember me. I started noticing things that didn't make sense. And trust me, that's saying something considering all the weirdness I'd already seen. Objects in my cab would move when I wasn't looking. I'd put my thermos down on the dash and find it tucked under the bunk an hour later. My route logs would be missing pages, just gone, clean as if they were never written. And the worst part? Sometimes I'd look in my logbook and find pages I didn't write, entries I don't remember making, scribbled handwriting that looked like mine, but off, like someone trying real hard to copy me. Stuff like, he's watching from the rest stop, don't get out, or keep driving. Don't fall asleep near mile marker 107. The one that chilled me to the bone was this. You already died once. They let you come back. Don't make them change their mind. I kept the lights on in the cab every night after that. Slept. With the engine running, the interior lights buzzing like bees in my ears just to drown out the silence. Then came the night I got routed through Colorado, taking a load of industrial generators up north past Durango. It's a lonely stretch through there, a lot of forest and steep drop-offs, and not a soul around after midnight. I was about 5 hours in when the fog rolled in thick, so thick I had to slow to 20 just to stay on the road. I'd seen fog before, but this was like trying to drive through milk. My headlights were useless, only making the white wall ahead of me glow brighter. I was just about to pull off and wait it out when I saw taillights up ahead. Faint, 2 red dots, hovering in the mist. Finally, I thought, another rig. Maybe I could convoy with them till the fog cleared. I followed those lights for miles, carefully, making sure I didn't lose sight of them. But no matter how close I got, I couldn't make out the truck, just those two lights, bobbing slightly like whatever I was following was driving, over a rough patch. I radioed out. "Breaker 19, this is Silverback. I'm on your 6, buddy. You got eyes in this soup?" Static. Then, for a brief moment, a voice hissed back. "Not a truck." Then silence. I damn near locked the brakes right there in the middle of the highway. Not a truck. What the hell was I following? I edged forward, slower now, watching those lights real careful. That's when the fog started to lift, just a little, and I could finally see the shape in front of me. It wasn't a truck. It wasn't even a car. It was two lanterns hanging from wooden poles, swaying gently in the breeze, and beneath them was a procession. Figures in dark robes, walking, barefoot along the highway, faces covered in old-timey plague doctor masks. I swerved off the road, hit the gravel shoulder hard, and nearly jackknifed the whole load trying to get away. When I stopped and looked back, nothing, no lanterns, no people, no fog, just open highway and a whole lot of questions. That's when I knew for sure I wasn't just witnessing hauntings. I was being invited into something dark. Something that lived out here on the highway, between the dotted lines and broken mile markers, where the veil between worlds is worn thin by the sound of wheels and the weight of diesel. And I was starting to think, maybe I'd already crossed over. After that Colorado run, I took a week off the road. Just parked my rig, shut off the CB, pulled the curtains in my sleeper, and tried to pretend I was a normal guy with a normal job. Spent a couple nights in a cheap motel with thin walls and burnt coffee, just trying to sleep without dreams. But it didn't help. Not one bit. The things I'd seen, the voices I'd heard, they stuck to me like road grime you can't scrub off. I'd close my eyes and hear footsteps circling the truck. Wake up in a cold sweat with frost on the inside of the window, even though it was the middle of summer. It got to the point where even silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied. Like something was waiting, crouched just behind the quiet, breathing slow and heavy. I was tempted to quit, seriously. Thought about selling the rig, maybe taking a job dispatching for a company, something safe. But here's the truth, and I ain't proud of it. Part of me couldn't let go. As scary as it all was, I needed answers. I needed to know what was happening to me out there. Because if it could happen to me, it could happen to others. Hell, maybe it already was. So I hit the road again, this time with a purpose. I started keeping track, not just of my routes, but of stories. I'd talk to other truckers at rest stops and diners, trade tales like old war stories. Most would just shrug and say I'd been on the road too long. But every now and then, I'd find one. Someone who'd seen something too. One night outside a truck stop in Nevada, I met this old-timer named Buck. White beard, weathered skin, eyes like cracked glass. He was sitting on a milk crate next to a vending machine, smoking the stub of a cigar and staring out into the desert like it owed him something. I bought him a coffee and asked if he'd ever seen weird stuff. On the road, he didn't even blink, just nodded and said, "You ever drive through Devil's Pass?" I shook my head. "You will," he said, real quiet. "It finds you." He went on to tell me about a 2-mile stretch of road near the Utah border. Said it only shows up at night and never in the same place twice. You're driving like normal, and then all of a sudden, the GPS goes dead. The road signs disappear, and you feel this pressure in your chest, like gravity just got a little heavier. You look in the rear view, and the road behind you's gone. Not just empty, gone. Black, like driving through a tunnel made of ink. And if you stop, you don't come back. He said he made it through once. Barely, but something followed him out. "You'll know you've been through Devil's Pass," Buck said, "when the stars above you don't look right anymore. They twist, they stare back." I laughed it off at the time, just trying to keep from losing my nerve. But 3 weeks later, somewhere outside of Utah, I drove into a fog bank that wasn't on the forecast. GPS went dark, and for 2 miles, my rig felt like it was floating. No road noise, no engine hum, just silence and this pull, like something wanted me to stop. But I didn't. I kept rolling, pedal down, knuckles white. And when I came out the other side, I looked up, and the stars didn't look the same. They were wrong. And I swear one of them blinked. I kept driving after that, but not 'cause I was brave, hell no. I kept driving 'cause I was scared of what might happen if I stopped. That night, after I came out of whatever the hell, the Devil's Pass was, I pulled into a way station just outside of Monticello. It was closed. Should have been empty. But there was a rig already parked there, engine off, no lights, no driver in sight. I didn't think much of it at first. Truckers nap in weird places all the time. But as I slowed to park next to it, my headlights caught the name stenciled on the driver's side door. Silverback. That's my call sign. Same paint job, same scuffed front bumper, same CB antenna bent just slightly to the left from that hailstorm in Nebraska last year. It was my truck, my exact rig, only I was still in mine. I slammed the brakes and sat there, engine idling, heart hammering in my chest. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, keeping my eyes locked on that mirror of my rig like it might disappear if I blinked. I walked up to the door, slow and careful, half expecting to see my own face looking back at me from behind the wheel. The window was fogged up, like someone had been breathing heavy inside. I reached for the handle, but before I could open it, the window rolled down on its own. And inside? Nothing. No driver. No seat. No cab interior. Just this endless black space stretching back farther than should be possible, farther than the size of any cab could hold. I shined my flashlight in, but the beam disappeared into the darkness like it was swallowed whole. Then I heard it. From deep inside that void came a voice. My voice. You should have stopped. I backed up, nearly tripping over my own boots, and ran back to my real rig. At least I hoped it was still the real one. Jumped in, fired her up, and tore out of that way station like I was outrunning death itself. I didn't stop again until I hit Colorado Springs, and even then I only let the truck idle while I sat there breathing like I'd just escaped something ancient. That night, I called my buddy Reggie, another long-haul driver I used to run. Roots was back in the day. Told him everything. He went quiet for a long time, then said, "You're not alone, brother. Some of us been seeing that kind of thing for years. The roads, they remember. They collect." "Collect what?" I asked. "People? Souls?" "No," he said. "Versions. There's a piece of every trucker still out there, driving the loops. Sometimes the road folds, and the you that could have stopped, or didn't, comes. Through. Not to warn you. To trade places." I laughed, but it was hollow. The kind of laugh you make when you already know something terrible is true. I kept seeing things after that. Not every night, not every trip, but often enough that I started leaving the CB off and covering the mirrors with old t-shirts when I slept. There's something out there on the highways, something old, something hungry, and it ain't interested in scaring you. It wants you to forget which truck is really yours until it's too late. One night, not long after that way station nightmare, I was running a route through northern Arizona near the petrified forest, a stretch of highway that already gives you the creeps even in daylight. The rocks out there look like bones turned to stone, and the trees, they don't look like trees. They look like something out of a graveyard for giants. I had a load of frozen meat heading west, and I figured I'd make Flagstaff by dawn if I kept steady. But around 2:30 a.m., the road went real quiet. Too quiet. Not just nobody around kind of quiet, but dead quiet. No wind, no engine hum, no tires on asphalt. Like my ears just quit. That's when I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. Not behind me, but to the side, in the sleeper. I whipped my head around, and sure as hell, I saw two faint headlights glowing right behind the curtain to my bunk, like a whole damn truck was driving inside my trailer. I slammed the brakes, swerved to the shoulder, and jumped out. Looked. In the trailer, nothing. Just pallets of boxed beef stacked tight. But when I climbed back in the cab, the curtain was open, and laying on my bunk was a fresh route log I hadn't written. Page was dated 3 days in the future. Destination, unknown. In the notes section, scrawled in jagged handwriting, it said, "Don't let the man in yellow wave you down, no matter what." I stared at that for a long while, heart pounding, skin cold. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but I damn sure found out 2 nights later. I was crossing into California, out near Barstow, late again. Always late, always dark. Road was long and flat, no other vehicles in sight. That's when I saw him, a man standing on the side of the highway, thumb out, wearing a yellow rain slicker. Thing is, it wasn't raining, hadn't been all week. He looked dry, too dry, like sun-bleached leather. His eyes were hidden behind mirrored aviators, and even from 100 feet away I could feel him smiling. I hit the gas, no hesitation, flew right past him without slowing down, but as I glanced in the mirror, he was gone. Just not there. And then somehow, he was ahead of me. Same man, same yellow coat, same grin. Just standing there like
he'd been plucked out of time and dropped back down in front of me. This happened 3 more times. Each time I passed him, he'd reappear farther down the road, like he was trying to get me to stop. The 4th time, I swerved around him.
Again, but my headlights caught something new. His hands. They were wrong. Way too long. Fingers thin like wires, hanging past his knees. And his mouth. It didn't smile. It split. Opened all the way to his chest, lined with teeth like a shark's, just grinning at me with no tongue, no sound, just rows of bone. I drove till the sun came up. Didn't eat. Didn't blink. Didn't stop. When I finally pulled into a rest stop in Bakersfield, I found the logbook still open in the passenger seat. The next page had appeared on its own. Another warning. You didn't stop. Good. But he remembers you now. Keep your mirrors covered. That was the day I started hanging rags over every reflective surface in the cab. Rear view, side mirrors, even the chrome on my thermos, and I haven't seen him since. But I know he's still out there, waiting, thumb out, grinning that impossible grin. And one of these nights, some other poor driver's gonna think it's just a guy who needs a ride, and they're gonna stop. God help him. After that run-in with the man in yellow, I started taking back roads more often, avoiding the stretches of highway that seemed to twist reality into something else. Thing is, sometimes the back roads are worse. They're older, less traveled, closer to whatever was here before we paved it all over. There's one in particular I'll never forget. It ain't on the map. I don't even remember turning onto it. One minute I was cruising through central Texas, and the next, I was driving down a narrow 2-lane that seemed to go on forever without a single sign or mile marker. The trees grew thick on either side, gnarled oaks and pines, leaning, in like they were trying to whisper to each other across the asphalt. It was night, naturally. Always is when this stuff happens. I was tired, but not sleepy tired. More like my body had energy, but my mind was slipping sideways, like I was drifting between awake and something deeper. That's when I saw the house, just sitting off the side of the road down a little gravel drive. Looked abandoned, windows boarded, porch sagging, weeds growing up through the steps, but the porch light was on, flickering like a dying bug zapper. And in the upstairs window, I swear I saw someone watching me. Not peeking, not hiding. Just standing there, staring down at the road like they were waiting for someone. My headlights caught their face for just a second. It was pale, wrong, like a photo that had been soaked in water and left to dry. Features blurred, mouth too wide, eyes sunken deep and still. I looked away, heart hammering, and kept driving. But the road curved back again, and the house was on the left now. Same house, same porch light, same warped figure staring out the window. I knew damn well I hadn't turned around. The GPS was dead again, of course, just stuck on the searching for signal screen like it always does when the weird stuff happens. I gripped the wheel tighter and floored it, engine roaring through the stillness. Trees rushed past in a blur, shadows stretching across the road like fingers trying to grab me. Then, a third time, the house again. This time, on both sides of the road. Perfect mirrors of each other, porch lights flickering in sync. 2 windows, 2 watchers, both staring at me. My radio hissed to life, static buzzing, and then, clear as day, my own voice came through. "You missed your turn." I slammed the brakes, heart about to bust through my ribs. Sat there in the middle of that cursed road, every instinct screaming to turn around. But when I looked behind me, the road was gone. Just trees. Dense. Black. Pressing in. No headlights. No trail. Nothing. Like I'd driven off the map and into something that didn't want me to leave. I looked forward, and there was the house. Again. But this time, the front door was open. I could see inside. A dim yellow glow, like candlelight, and just past the threshold, a table with a chair. And sitting at that table was me. I don't mean someone who looked like me, I mean me. Same flannel shirt, same hat, even the same busted knuckle on. My left hand from changing a tire last week, and that version of me, he was smiling, slowly, with teeth that were too many and too sharp. I threw the rig in reverse, tires squealing, trying to back the hell out of that nightmare. And then, bam, road again. Just regular old Texas blacktop stretching into the night like nothing happened. GPS flickered back on. Engine purred like normal. No house, no watchers, just stars and silence. But every time I close my eyes, since then I see that other me sitting at the table, still smiling. Like he's waiting for me to come back. And one day, maybe I will. Maybe the road will take me there whether I want to go or not. I tried forgetting about that house, pretending it was just a dream brought on by too much caffeine and too many hours behind the wheel. But this job, it don't let you forget. The highway remembers what you've seen. It circles back in its own time, and when it does, it always takes something new from you. About a week later, I was hauling up through the Dakotas, chasing a midnight deadline with a trailer full of farm equipment. The wind up there howls like a banshee even on a calm night, but this time it was dead silent. No rustle, no whistle, just the sound of my tires on the cracked road and the occasional rattle of chains in the back. It was one of those nights where you feel like you're being watched, not by someone close, but by something far off. Like the sky itself is leaning in, listening. Around 3:15 a.m. I saw a sign that didn't make sense. Just a plain wooden board sticking out of the dirt off to the right, painted in hand-scrawled white letters, "All routes lead back." That's it. No town name, no mileage, not even a post to hold it up. Just sitting there in the middle of nowhere. I kept going. What else could I do? But 10 miles down the road, there it was again. Same sign, same damn words. I pulled over that time, shined my flashlight on it, walking up close to make sure I wasn't seeing things. The paint was fresh, wet. I touched it, and my fingers came away white like I dipped them in milk. The second I got back in the truck and started rolling, the air changed. The smell. That crisp northern air suddenly reeked of rot. Wet leaves, moldy wood, something sweet and sick underneath it all, like old meat left in the sun. I tried opening the windows. Didn't help. The smell was coming from inside the truck. I checked the vents, the seats, even the floorboards. That's when I heard the thump. From inside the sleeper cab. One slow thump, like someone had knocked from the inside with the soft part of their fist. I stopped breathing. Reached back and yanked the curtain open. Nothing. Empty. I crawled in to check underneath the mattress, and that's when the lights cut out. Not just the cab lights, the headlights, the dash, everything. Total blackout. The engine still rumbled, but the world outside was pitch black. Not even the moon showed. Then the CB crackled. Again, no one should have been on the other end. I hadn't touched it in days. Through the static came a voice that sounded like gravel soaked in blood. "Let him out." That's all it said, over and over. "Let him out. Let him out." I grabbed the mic and yelled, "Let who out?" Silence. Then, a soft scraping sound behind me. I turned and saw the floor of the sleeper cab starting to bulge, like someone was pushing up from underneath. Slow. Intentional. Not frantic. I didn't wait. Fired up the lights and floored it, trailer rattling like a bag of bones behind. Me. I drove till the sun rose, didn't stop once. When I finally pulled off at a truck stop near Bismarck, I checked the sleeper again. It looked normal, but taped to the inside of the curtain was a photo. An old weathered Polaroid. Showed me standing next to my rig, only I wasn't smiling. My mouth was stitched shut with what looked like fishing line, and behind me, peeking out from the open sleeper door, was a face I didn't recognize. Gray-skinned, eyes like burned-out headlights, mouth full of black teeth. Written on the bottom of the photo in faded ink were 3 words: "He got out." I ain't used that sleeper since. Don't plan to. These days, I drive straight through or sleep outside. It's safer with the sky watching than with whatever might be crawling around inside your own damn truck. Few weeks after that, I started hearing whispers in the wind. Soft things that didn't sound like words at first, just hushing. Noises like someone trying to calm a scared animal. I kept thinking maybe it was the wind catching my mirrors, or maybe the radio picking up cross-chatter from stations a few states over. But the whispers, they started saying my name. Not shouting, just speaking, clear as a bell on a dead channel. One night I was hauling livestock up through Nebraska, cattle mostly, stinking to high heaven like always, but the kind of job that paid well if you didn't ask too many questions about where they were headed. The night was foggy, real low, clinging to the wheels, and the road ahead looked like it was vanishing into a thick wall of smoke. I turned my brights on, but it didn't help. Just bounced back in my face like the fog was fighting me. Then I saw her. Right in the middle of the road. A woman in a tattered white dress, long black hair blowing in wind that I couldn't feel, eyes closed like she was sleepwalking. I barely had time to brake, swerved hard to the right, and jackknifed the whole rig into a shallow ditch. Wasn't pretty, but I missed her. When I climbed out to check, she was gone. No blood, no body, nothing. Just hoof tracks, not cow prints though. These were too narrow, too sharp, like goat hooves, but the cattle were still locked in tight. None of them had busted loose. I checked the road, walked a good 50 feet, in both directions, and that's when I heard her humming, soft like a lullaby, coming from under the truck. I dropped to my knees with a flashlight and looked underneath, and there she was, crammed between the axles, bent backwards in ways no bones should allow, her hair hanging down like wet seaweed, eyes wide open and smiling. Not like a person, like something pretending to be a person. She started to crawl toward me, limbs snapping in weird angles, mouth stretching too far, humming getting louder the closer she came. I scrambled back into the cab, locked the doors, and threw that truck in reverse, wheels digging deep into the mud as I backed out of that ditch like the devil himself was pushing me. Didn't even check for damage till I hit the next town. When I finally did stop and looked under the truck again, she wasn't there, but scratched into the undercarriage with what looked like claws were the words, "She rides now." I figured maybe it was a warning. Maybe she hitched a ride. Either way, every time I hit a foggy patch of road now, I see her reflection in the windshield, sitting in the passenger seat, humming that same tune, eyes never blinking. Sometimes she's there for a few seconds. Sometimes she stays for miles. Doesn't say nothing, just sits and smiles and hums. I tried telling another driver about it once at a diner outside Des Moines. Old guy, seen some stuff. He went pale, put his fork down and said, "You ever hear her stop?" "Humming, don't look at her. No matter what you hear, no matter what she says, don't look." I asked him what happens if I do. He just shook his head and said, "You don't come back with your own eyes." I never asked him what that meant. Didn't want to know. But now, when I'm driving and the humming stops, I grip the wheel and stare dead ahead until it starts. Up again. Every single time. Because I ain't ready to see what's sitting next to me when the song ends. A couple nights after that, I got caught in a rainstorm near the Oklahoma border. The kind of storm that don't just fall. It crashes down in sheets so thick, you can't tell the difference between the sky and the road. Thunder shook the rig like fists pounding on the trailer walls, and lightning lit up the world like a strobe light from some backwoods nightmare rave. I was inching along, wipers doing their damnedest but still losing the fight, when I saw a figure standing by the guardrail, thumb out, like they were hitchhiking. Now look, I don't stop for hitchers. Not out of meanness, just experience. Most times it's desperate folks. Sometimes it's weird folks. And once it wasn't folks at all. But something about this one, I can't explain it. It felt like I didn't have a choice. Like my hands were moving on their own, easing that wheel over to the shoulder before I even realized what I was doing. The figure climbed in without saying a word. Didn't even open the door, just appeared in the passenger seat, with water drip, drip, dripping off their clothes, soaking into my floor. Wore a long black coat that didn't seem wet despite the storm, and their head was down, hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. Couldn't see their face, could barely even feel. Their presence, like the air itself, got colder around them. "Where you headed?" I asked, my voice shaky. They didn't answer, just raised a hand and pointed forward. So I drove. The storm followed us like it was tied to that thing sitting beside me, never lessening, never moving on. I noticed, after a few minutes, that we weren't passing any signs anymore. No exits, no road markers, no mileposts. Just empty black road and trees that leaned too close, like they wanted to listen in. Then the radio came on by itself. Not music, not voices. Just a low, growling static, like something trying to claw its way out the speakers. That's when my passenger started whispering. Not to me, to the radio, in a language I don't ever want to hear again. Words that sounded like bones cracking underwater, syllables that made my teeth hurt just hearing them. And I swear on my life, the static answered back. They whispered. It growled. They whispered again. It laughed. Not a human laugh. Something, low and wet, like a throat full of gravel and tar. I don't know how long I drove. Might have been hours. Might have been minutes. But finally the figure raised their hand again, still without looking at me, and pointed left, right off the road into what looked like thick woods. There wasn't even a turnoff, just black trees and deep brush. But again, my hands moved, on their own. I felt the wheel turn and the rig glided off the highway like it was floating. I should have been hitting stumps, ditches, trees, but we just drifted forward, deeper into the woods, headlights barely reaching past the twisted trunks. Then the rig stopped, on its own. Dead silent. Rain stopped. Wind gone. I turned to the passenger seat, and it was empty. Dry, too. Not a drop of water left. No footprints, no trace. Only thing there was a key. An old brass thing, rusted, laying on the seat where the hitcher had been. I picked it up, and suddenly I was back on the highway, just driving like normal, like none of it ever happened. But I still got that key. I keep it in the glove box. I tried throwing it out once, but it always finds its way back. And sometimes, when I'm driving past thick woods, I swear I feel that cold air again. Like the hitcher's waiting. Not for a ride, but for me to use the key. And I got a bad feeling about what it unlocks. There was a stretch of road out in Arizona I used to dread driving. Long, dry, nothing but rock, cactus, and sky. Heat bakes the world out there till the air itself looks like it's melting. They call it Devil's Spine. Not an official name, just what truckers whisper to each other at diners and gas pumps. It's a cursed road, they say. Don't show up on no GPS. Don't show up on no map. But every now and then when you're Rollin' west past Flagstaff on a moonless night, your route'll take a sudden detour without warning. You won't even notice you've left the main road until it's too late. That happened to me. Dead of night. I was haulin' refrigerated. Produced from New Mexico to California. I was tired, running on coffee and stubbornness, eyes just barely open. Then bam, I blink and the signs are gone. No mile markers, no exit numbers, just this 2-lane ribbon of cracked asphalt winding through blood-red canyons. It took me a minute to realize I wasn't where I was supposed to be. My GPS screen went black. My phone said no service. Even the CB just hissed like a pit full of angry snakes. Now you'd think I'd stop, maybe try to turn around, but something about that road, it pulls at you. Like gravity, but worse. The further I went, the more the air felt wrong. Heavy. Charged, like the sky was holding its breath. The rocks around me weren't shaped right either. Jagged, sharp like teeth, bending in directions that didn't follow any law of nature I know. I passed an old wrecked pickup truck, crushed flat like it had been dropped from the sky. Windows, blown out, blood sprayed on the inside like paint. But no body. Just the feeling that someone had been there recently. Then the temperature dropped. I'm talking instant deep freeze, colder than the trailer behind me. My breath came out in clouds, and frost crept up the inside of the windshield like fingers. That's when I saw the first one. A man standing in the middle of the road, naked, skin pale blue, eyes all white. He didn't move, didn't flinch as I barreled toward him at 45 miles an hour. I swerved off instinct, tires screeching, the trailer fishtailing behind me, nearly throwing the whole rig off the cliff. But I didn't crash. Somehow I stayed on the road. When I looked back, he was gone. Just vanished into the night. A few miles later, more of them started appearing. Standing on the shoulder, crouched in the rocks, hanging from the cliff edges like human-shaped bats. All pale, all silent, all watching. I tried turning on the radio, hoping for anything. Music, a voice, even a damn commercial. All I got was static and whispering. Not English, not Spanish. Something older. A chant, maybe. I turned it off, but the whispering didn't stop. Just kept on, getting louder, echoing inside the cab like it was coming from my own head. Then I saw the gate. That's the only way I can describe it. Towering arches of black stone covered in carvings that looked like they'd been etched by claws instead of tools. It sat right in the middle of the road, stretching up into the sky until it disappeared into the stars. I knew, deep down, if I drove through that thing, I wasn't coming back. My hands started turning the wheel again, same as they did with the hitcher. But this time, I fought it. I gripped the wheel tight, bit my lip till I bled, and slammed the brakes so hard the whole rig screamed in protest. The truck stopped, inches from the gate. Everything went silent. Not just outside, inside. No engine noise, no breathing, like the world had been muted. Then the carvings on the gate glowed, red at first, then white, then black, and something on the other side moved. I didn't stick around to find out what. I threw that rig in reverse and gunned it, driving backward through the canyon like a madman, mirroring the path by memory. The pale people didn't follow, but they watched. When I finally broke through and hit real pavement again, my GPS flickered back to life. It showed me right outside Kingman. And the time? 3 days had passed. 3. I hadn't eaten. Hadn't slept. Tank was still half full. But the reefer in the back? All the produce had rotted, liquefied, like it had been left in the desert sun for a week. I lost the contract. Got chewed out by dispatch. But I didn't care. I got away. And I ain't driven west of Flagstaff after midnight since. Because Devil's Spine don't need permission to take you. It just waits till you're tired, till your mind's soft, and then it pulls you in. And if you drive through that gate, you don't come back the same. If you come back at all. There's a little rest stop I used to hit up just outside of Boise, Idaho. Nothing fancy. 2 gas pumps, One of those old vending machines that eats your money more than it spits out snacks. And a tiny diner that served the best damn meatloaf I've ever had. But one night, that place showed me something I'll never forget. I was driving through a storm, one of those slow, heavy rains that soaks into everything and makes the world feel heavier, like it's dragging your soul down with the mud. I was running behind schedule and needed coffee bad, so I pulled into the rest stop around 3 a.m. The place looked normal at first. Lights on, sign buzzing with that annoying flicker. A couple other rigs parked in the lot, but no sign of their drivers. I figured they were inside, maybe taking a nap in the booths or hitting the john. I walked into the diner, and it was empty. I mean dead empty. No staff. No customers. No sound. The jukebox in the corner was lit up, but not playing. Plates of half-eaten food sat on the tables, like people had just walked away mid-bite. Coffee pots were still full and hot, steam curling out the top. Something about the whole scene felt paused, like time had been walking, then suddenly decided to sit down and take a break. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing. No echo even. That's when I noticed the smell. Iron. Like rust. Or blood. I turned to leave, but the front door was gone. Not locked. Gone. Behind me was just a solid wall of old wallpaper, yellowed and peeling. I spun around, and the diner didn't look the same anymore. The colors were off, like someone had drained all the red out of the world. The meat on the plates was moving, writhing like it was still alive, and the coffee in the pots had turned thick and black like oil. Then the jukebox kicked on. But it wasn't music. It was that hum again. The same one from the woman in The Fog, the lullaby, soft, slow, and wrong. And right then, the booths started filling up, one by one. People materializing like shadows that remembered how to be solid. Only they weren't people. They looked like people. But their faces were smeared, like a painting caught in the rain. Eyes too wide, mouths too still. And they all turned to look at me, in unison. The closest one opened its mouth, too wide, no teeth, and said, "Sit, eat." I backed away, heart pounding in my throat, and one of them stood up. Its legs cracked like dry branches, and it shuffled toward me, arms outstretched. "Sit, eat, sit, eat," they all started chanting, over and over. I reached for anything I could grab, and hurled a metal napkin dispenser at the jukebox. It hit square and the thing exploded in a flash of sparks, and suddenly everything went dark. Silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing outside, alone, rain still falling, truck still idling, and the rest stop? It was boarded. Up. Broken windows. Covered in graffiti. A dead place. Hadn't been open in years. I climbed back in the cab and drove straight through to Oregon without stopping once. I don't care how tired I am or how bad I need coffee. I ain't ever stopping at a rest area in Idaho again. Especially not at 3 a.m. If you do, make sure that jukebox stays off. Because once that lullaby starts playing, you might never leave. I remember one winter night in Montana, deep in the middle of nowhere, the kind of cold that cuts straight through steel and bone. I was hauling a double trailer of heating oil to some mountain town that barely showed up on a map. Road was slick, wind was howling like a wolf with its foot caught in a trap, and visibility was maybe 5 feet ahead with the snow blowing. Sideways. Around 2:30 a.m., I saw a light up ahead, red and swinging like it was hanging from a wire, maybe one of those old railroad lanterns. It was just floating there on the side of the road, swaying gently. I slowed down, squinting, through the snow, and then I saw a figure standing beneath it. A man in an old-timey conductor's coat, heavy wool with brass buttons, holding that lantern out toward the road like he was flagging me down. Now I'm not dumb. I know better than to stop for weird roadside figures in the middle of a blizzard. But this wasn't just any storm. I was fighting the wheel the whole way, barely staying on the icy blacktop, and something about the way he stood there, still as stone, not even shivering. Well, it froze me up. Next thing I knew, My truck eased to a stop right in front of him. He looked up at me, face pale, beard frozen stiff with ice. And then he did the weirdest thing. He walked straight through my truck. Not around, not in, through. My headlights passed right through his body like he was fog. My blood turned to ice. I turned to look out the passenger side mirror, and he was gone. Just disappeared into the snow. The lantern? Still swinging behind me on an invisible hook glowing red. Then I heard it, the low rumble of a train horn, but not like a real one. This sounded far away, too far, hollow, ghostly. And get this, I was nowhere near any tracks. Closest railroad was miles away, but the sound kept coming, low, mournful, and coming closer. I looked in my side mirror, and what I saw almost made me wreck right there on that icy highway. A train, a full-on steam engine, black as tar, coming up behind me without a track to ride on. It was rolling silent except for that awful horn, smokestack pouring black mist into the sky, wheels grinding but not touching anything solid. It was gliding, passing through the snow like it owned the world, and it wasn't slowing. Down. It was gaining on me. I hit the throttle and the truck roared, engine screaming, tires slipping and grabbing as I fought to keep traction. But no matter how fast I went, the train kept coming. I looked again and saw faces in the windows, pale faces, dead faces. Every one of them staring straight at me like they were waiting for me to climb aboard. Some of them had mouths open like they were screaming, but no sound came out. Just that damned horn blowing through my soul. Then came the whisper, floating through my cab from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You missed your stop, but we're still taking passengers." I gritted my teeth and screamed, floored it, didn't care about jackknifing or flipping anymore. I'd rather crash into a ditch than let that thing catch me. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the sound stopped. Snow cleared. The high road was normal again. I looked behind me. No train, no lantern, just empty Montana highway. But to this day, I swear I can still hear that horn sometimes in the middle of the night when I'm driving through snowy country. Not loud, just a whisper on the wind. And every time I do, I keep my eyes glued to the mirrors. Because one day, that ghost train might catch up. And when it does, I don't think I'll be driving away. There's one stretch of road in the southern part of Louisiana that still haunts me more than anything I've seen. And that's saying something. Coming from a guy who's looked a ghost train in the eye. This happened on an overnight haul to Baton Rouge. I was carrying a load of auto parts, nothing special, but the route took me through an old bayou road that I'd never been down before. No streetlights, no reflectors, just thick swamp on both sides and trees that arched over the pavement like they were trying to keep the night from leaking out. It was humid, hot even though it was midnight, and the air smelled like rotten wood and wet leaves. I had the windows cracked, sweating despite the AC, and the CB was dead silent. No chatter, not even static, just dead air. I remember the dashboard clock flickered for a second, blinked 1:13, then went dark, then came back up reading 3:03. 2 hours gone, just like that. Thought maybe I dozed off, but I hadn't pulled over, hadn't stopped. The rig was still moving, road still rolling under my tires. That's when I noticed the fog. Thick, milky stuff creeping out of the woods and spilling onto the road. It clung to the ground and crawled up the sides of the cab like hands reaching. I slowed down, squinting, when I saw a woman standing in the road ahead. Long white dress, soaked to the bone and sticking to her frame. Her hair hung wet and dark over her face, and she wasn't moving, just standing dead center of the lane with her head down. I hit the air horn. No reaction. I flashed my brights. Nothing. I was down to 15 miles an hour and closing fast, and my gut was screaming at me to not stop. So I swerved, wheels skidding across damp asphalt, and missed her by inches. The truck rocked hard, almost hit a tree, but I kept it upright and rolled on through. I glanced back in the mirror, and she was sitting on my trailer hitch. I don't even know how to explain it. One second she was gone. Next she was perched like some wet owl back there, dress flapping in the wind, head still hanging low. I could barely breathe. I floored it. That swamp road started stretching. Like it wasn't real anymore. Just kept going and going, bending back on itself, trees looking the same every mile. I'd passed the same twisted oak with the 3 branches 5 times before I realized I wasn't getting out. Then she started climbing, from the hitch to the ladder, from the ladder to the side mirror, and when I looked over, there she was, face to face, pale skin, no eyes, just black sockets leaking swamp water that hissed when it hit the floor of the cab. Her mouth opened, real slow, like it hadn't been used in years. And what came out wasn't words. It was a low, gurgled breath that froze everything. My hands, my heart. The engine died mid-drive. Total silence. No lights, no power, just my truck gliding to a stop in the middle of the fog. She slipped inside, not through the door, through the window, like she was made of smoke and water. Sat in the passenger seat and stared at me with those hollow pits. Then, in a whisper that felt like it came from inside my skull, she said, "You took the wrong turn. Now you ride with me." My mouth was dry as bone, but somehow I managed to whisper. I didn't mean to. And that seemed to stop her for a second. She tilted her head like she was listening to some distant voice, then blinked, once, and disappeared. Just like that. Lights snapped back on, engine roared to life, and I was parked right outside Baton Rouge, like nothing had happened, like it was just another leg of the trip. But here's the kicker. When I checked the trailer at delivery, there were wet footprints inside, bare feet, small, and leading toward the cab. The dispatcher said I was late by 7 hours. I hadn't eaten, didn't feel tired. But I looked like hell. Ever since then, I avoid the swamp. Don't care if it adds 100 miles to the trip. I'll never take that road again. And if you're driving through Louisiana at night and you see a woman in white standing in the road, don't stop, don't swerve. Just keep going, and don't look back. One time I was hauling refrigerated goods up through West Virginia, headed toward Pittsburgh, and I had to take this old coal route through the mountains because the main interstate was shut down due to a landslide. Now, I'm no stranger to back roads, but this one felt wrong from the get-go. It was narrow, barely room for a full-sized rig like mine, and the trees pressed in from both sides like they were trying to trap me. No lights, no signs, and my GPS kept freaking out. One second I was on Coal Ridge Lane, next second it just read no route. Not rerouting, just blank. Still, I pressed on. Had to. Cold load like that don't wait for comfort. Was maybe 20 miles into the mountain road when the CB crackled to life, and I swear to you, it wasn't a voice I recognized. It was scratchy, full of static, and all it said was, "You shouldn't be here." I figured maybe it was some local trucker screwing around, but there weren't no other trucks on the road. Hadn't seen a tail light or a headlight in over an hour. That's when I noticed the trees started changing. I mean really changing. Their trunks were bending, twisted like they'd been scorched and warped by fire. And they were covered in these black vines that pulsed, like veins under skin. Every now and then, I'd catch something hanging from a branch. Looked like a deer carcass at first, but it wasn't no animal I'd ever seen. The bones were too long, the face too human, and they were wrapped in the same black vines, swinging like wind chimes in dead air. I was trying to keep my eyes on the road, heart pounding, when I saw something dart across my high beams. It was low to the ground, fast, pale. I slammed the brakes, tires skidding on gravel, and just sat there with my breath fogging up the windshield. Then I heard it, tapping, light, like a fingernail, on the passenger side window. I turned my head slow, real slow, and saw a face pressing against the glass, but it wasn't outside. It was inside, stretched long and thin, eyes like wet marbles, mouth hanging open in a silent scream. I screamed, hit the gas, Didn't care if I clipped a tree or slid off the edge. I just had to get off that road. The whole truck shook like something was crawling underneath it, like bugs skittering across the undercarriage. The CB crackled again, this time louder, clearer. A woman's voice saying, "Turn around, turn around, turn around," over and over, faster and faster, but I didn't turn. I just kept going. Every bend in the road looked the same. Every mile I drove felt like I was going deeper into somewhere I wasn't meant to be. Then I came around a sharp curve, and there was this tunnel, an old coal shaft, brick-lined, crumbling in spots. And on the arch above it, spray-painted in red letters, were the words, "Last Chance." I didn't even blink. I drove straight in, and for a few seconds, everything went black. No lights, no engine hum, no sense of motion, just nothing. Like being dead and floating in space. Then bam, sunlight, road, civilization. I was rolling into Pittsburgh, tires hitting smooth pavement, horns honking in traffic. Just like that. Like none of it ever happened. But I checked my dash clock and it had jumped 10 hours. My logs didn't show the detour. My GPS history wiped clean, and worst of all, my dash cam, which records every mile, corrupted. Just a long stretch of black video with that same woman's voice whispering, "Turn around," on repeat. I'll never take that coal road again. Don't even remember how I got to it in the first place. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm hauling through the mountains, the CB will crackle, and that same voice will come through. Soft. Real soft. "You shouldn't be here, and let me tell you, when I hear that." I find the nearest exit, pull over, and I wait for the sun. This next one still gives me chills, and it ain't just because of what I saw, it's because I brought it with me. I was running a long haul out of Arizona, heading toward Kansas City with a full load of building materials. The trip was going smooth until I got flagged to detour through a stretch of old highway that cut through an abandoned military training ground. Now I've driven past bases before, and yeah, they got that weird hush about them. But this place? It was dead. No fences, no lights, just crumbling watchtowers, busted chain-link gates swinging in the wind, and old warning signs half buried in sand. Unauthorized personnel keep out and biohazard quarantined zone. No date, no explanation. I figured it was decommissioned, just a shortcut through history. But about 20 minutes in, my headlights caught something sitting in the road. At first, I thought it was a busted drone or maybe a chunk of fallen equipment, some kind of military scrap. But when I got closer, I saw it was a helmet. Not modern military, though. This thing was smooth, rounded, and black like obsidian. No visor, no markings. Looked almost alien. I stopped, stepped out the cab to move it off the road, and the second I touched it, the air changed. No wind, no sound, just this crushing pressure, like the sky dropped 10 feet closer. I flung the thing into the brush and got back in my rig, spooked but ready to chalk it up to nerves. That's when my dashboard lights flickered. My speedometer spun like it was having a seizure, and the fuel gauge dropped to 0 before shooting back up. Then my radio, completely off, let out this low-frequency hum that rattled my teeth. I floored it, tried to push through whatever was happening, but the sky above me turned this sickly green, clouds spinning like they were being stirred by some giant spoon. Then came the lights, not headlights, not planes. These were orbs, big, pulsing ones, hovering along the treetops and pacing my truck. No sound. Just that hum, louder and louder until it felt like it was inside my skull. And I swear, I saw figures in those lights. Tall, thin, moving in unnatural ways, like their joints bent in too many directions. I kept driving, couldn't stop, not even when the road vanished beneath me and I was riding blind. The lights finally disappeared around dawn, and just like that, the road came back. Trees, sky, normal air. I pulled into a truck stop just outside Albuquerque, white-knuckled and shaken. Thought I'd left it all behind. But that night, parked and trying to sleep, I heard it again. That hum, coming from inside the trailer. I climbed out, unlocked the doors, swung them open, and nothing. Just pallets and straps. But the air back there was cold, ice cold, in the middle of a New Mexico summer, and etched into the aluminum wall right where I swore I tossed that helmet was a handprint. Too long, fingers like twigs, and it wasn't mine. Ever since then, weird things happen around my rig. Electronics glitch, clocks spin. I get these strange dreams about places I ain't never seen. Barren landscapes with 2 moons and black pyramids that hum like they're alive. I ain't saying aliens. I ain't saying government cover-ups. But something's out there in that desert. Something that don't take kindly to being disturbed. And I think I brought a piece of it back with me. Last run I ever took on that cursed stretch of road was supposed to be an easy one. Just a short night haul from Springfield up to Des Moines. I figured I'd done my share of bad miles. Seen enough strange stuff to last 3 lifetimes. But I was wrong. This was the one that broke me. The one that made me hang up my keys for good. I remember the sky was a muddy gray that night, heavy like it knew something was waiting. I fueled up, checked the trailer, and rolled out around 8 p.m. About an hour in, things started feeling off. Not like a flat tire or a loose strap, more like the world itself was tilted. I passed a familiar rest stop, but it looked wrong. Empty, no lights, no cars, just one old man sitting at a picnic table staring up at the sky. Didn't even blink when I passed. I hit the highway and the miles started melting away, too fast. Like I was driving through time instead of space. I looked at the dash, 2:14 a.m., blinked, 4:06 a.m., blinked again, 1:01 a.m. My stomach turned, my hands were cold. I pulled over on the shoulder, killing the engine, trying to catch my breath. That's when I heard the voices. They weren't on the radio, and they weren't outside. They were inside the cab, whispering behind my seat. Words I couldn't make out, but I could feel them crawl up my spine. I turned, slow as I could, and there was nothing there. Just my duffel, my thermos, and an ice-cold draft rolling up from the floorboards. Then I looked in the mirror. Not the side mirror. The rear view. And there was a girl sitting in my sleeper. Pale skin. Black hair hanging over her face. She looked right at me through the mirror and said, "You're the last one." I spun around, and she was gone. But her voice was still there, and now it was echoing from outside. Like 100 people were whispering the same words over and over. "You're the last one, the last one, the last." I didn't waste a second. I threw the truck into gear and hit the gas, tearing down the highway like hell itself was chasing me, and maybe it was. The road started changing. Not just twists and turns, but the asphalt itself, cracked, covered in symbols that glowed faint blue in my headlights. Trees lining the road curled toward me like claws. Shadows moved across the pavement without anything cast in them. And in the middle of it all was a tunnel, blacker than pitch, carved right into the hillside. I didn't want to drive through it. My whole soul screamed no. But there was nowhere else to go. I drove in, praying to every god I'd long since forgotten. Inside that tunnel, everything stopped. The lights, the engine, even the sound of my own breath. It felt like being trapped underwater, but with no pressure, just emptiness. And in that void, I saw them. Every face I'd ever passed on the road, every ghost, every monster, every twist of reality that had clung to my truck. Like barnacles on a ship, they were all there, watching, judging, waiting. The girl appeared again, right in front of the windshield, hovering in midair like she was part of the tunnel itself. She smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. "You kept driving," she whispered. "You didn't stop. That's why you made it this far." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Then she reached through the glass, right through it, and touched my chest. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was sitting in my rig in an empty lot just outside Des Moines. Sun was rising, birds were chirping, truck was clean, logbook untouched, no record of the trip. But I knew it happened, because taped to my dashboard was a photograph, faded, old, of me. Standing next to my rig, smiling. Only it wasn't my rig. And I ain't never owned the clothes I was wearing. And written on the back, in shaky handwriting, was, "The last one made it through. This time." That was the final trip and ever took. I parked that truck, turned in my keys, and never looked back. Some roads ain't meant to be traveled. Some ghosts ain't meant to be outrun. And if you ever find yourself driving through the dark, with time slipping sideways, and the radio whispering your name, don't stop. Keep your hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, and pray you ain't the last one.